Eric, can you tell me what you think the top 2 or 3 challenges will be to international cooperation and governance moving forward?
At the Maryam Forum, we are really focusing on looking at the world from the perspective of the emerging and developing economies. They depend very much on the global architecture, on the international financial institutions, the international institutions designed to protect the global commons against pandemics and against climate change and so on. There are 3 things that came out of the COVID-19. One was the fact that these institutions have not really managed to step up in the crisis. The second thing that came out, which is also pre-existed COVID, was sort of less sense of ownership to these institutions, or less sense of being part of shaping them and governing these institutions. And the last thing was this deepening rift between US and China that sort of undermines everything that we want to achieve at the global level.
What are 3 tangible things that we can do as the next generation of policy leaders to ensure that these international institutions remain effective and capable to tackle global problems?
The most immediate thing that needs to be done is to provide sufficient resources to the international institutions. We're talking about the IMF, the World Bank and the regional development banks, and the specialized agencies, international institutions like WHO. We're going to need it to address the current pandemic, but of course, more long-term, these institutions are critical to anything we want to do at the global level. The second thing that should be done, here I think we should do challenge by challenge. The COVID-19 taught us what needs to be done in terms of preparing yourself for and responding to a pandemic. And that, I think there would be quite a bit of consensus around the world, what type of rules and regulations we need to have, what type of institutions are needed. And we should go issue by issue, climate, forced dislocation. We should look at issue by issue and see, what can we agree on. The last thing, and that is, I think, a much more ambitious agenda, is to take the experience from the financial safety network, the Article 4 consultations that the IMF and the World Bank conduct, think of that also in other areas. So strengthening surveillance in general. We should create a global financial risk map that looks at various risks in the system. We should look at a global development risk map, look at things like pandemics that can create instability at the global level.
How can the Maryam Forum help us further the protection of the global commons, and what will leaders need to demonstrate in order to do so?
The Maryam Forum is very much about contributing to building an ecosystem of leadership, an ecosystem that is based on evidence, based on research, where leaders are accountable and in particular they are inclusive. And the Maryam Forum is really trying to engage with emerging and developing countries, and both through sort of peer-to-peer, across emerging economies, but also between emerging economies and advanced economies. And this, I think, when you start talking about rules and regulations and institutions at the global level, making that process inclusive and making sure that they don't unnecessarily intervene in local democracies and so on. So that, I think, is something that the Maryam Forum can be part of, creating the right atmosphere, the right framework for thinking about how we can move these reforms of the international framework forward.
Join the Maryam Forum.
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 Join the Maryam Forum.